Most people think boredom is a problem. High performers know it's a signal that your mind is underused, a signal that you've escaped reaction and entered control. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you feel bored easily, it doesn't mean you lack ambition. It means your brain has been trained to fear silence because silence removes stimulation. And without stimulation, you're left alone with your own thinking. That's exactly why most people avoid it. The modern world has taught you that constant input equals productivity, messages, feeds, notifications, noise. But the people who actually make long-range decisions, the ones who see further, move slower, and win quietly, do the opposite. They protect boredom, not because they're lazy. Not because they have more time, but because boredom is where strategic intelligence wakes up. This video isn't about embracing boredom in a motivational sense. It's about understanding why the absence of stimulation creates an unfair cognitive advantage. And why, if boredom feels unbearable to you right now, that discomfort isn't a weakness. It's the doorway. Most people click away before they ever step through it.
Boredom is not emptiness. It is surplus. Think of it like a silent airport runway at night. No planes taking off, no landings. Not because the airport is useless, but because there is nothing scheduled that deserves the runway yet. That is what boredom is. Unused cognitive capacity waiting for a worthy problem. Here's the mistake most people make. They feel boredom, immediately fill it. Phone, tab, noise, motion. Like revving an engine in neutral just to feel busy. A high performer does the opposite. Imagine two people waiting in line. One pulls out their phone within 3 seconds. The other just stands there, observing, thinking, same situation. Completely different brains at work. That second person is not disengaged. Their mind is reallocating resources, shifting from reaction to internal processing. Neuroscience backs this up. When external stimulation drops, the brain does not shut down. It reroutes energy inward. Core systems are responsible for planning, abstraction, and long-range thinking. This is measurable. Lower sensory input increases activity in networks, linked to self-directed cognition. In simple terms, boredom means your brain has bandwidth, and bandwidth is dangerous if you do not know how to use it. Most people numb it because unused capacity feels uncomfortable. Like standing in a quiet room where your own thoughts echo too loudly. But that discomfort is not a flaw. It is pressure before clarity. Here is the reward most never reach. When you stop escaping boredom, you start noticing patterns. Your thinking slows down, then sharpens. Decisions feel cleaner, less reactive, more deliberate. That is the shift, but this is just the signal. The real problem begins when stimulation becomes an addiction, and that is where the advantage is either lost or multiplied. Strategic thinking does not disappear. It gets crowded out. Picture your mind as a command room. Screens everywhere. Alerts flashing. Every notification feels urgent. None of them are important. That is stimulation addiction. You do not notice it at first. It feels productive, responsive, efficient, but over time, something subtle breaks. You start making fast decisions. Watch a typical workday. Email, message, scroll, task, switch, switch, switch. Your attention never lands long enough to see the whole board. Here is what is happening under the surface. Every hit of novelty triggers a small dopamine release. Not pleasure, anticipation. The brain starts chasing the next signal like a heat-seeking missile. Psychology is clear on this. Frequent reward signals reduce tolerance. You need more input for the same sense of engagement. The cost is not focus. It is foresight. This is where strategy dies. Strategic thinking requires latency, a pause between stimulus and response. But stimulation addiction collapses that gap. You react before you evaluate. High performers know this. That is why they look slower. See further. While others are busy responding, they are waiting, letting the noise settle, letting the signal rise. Here is the conflict most people miss. The tools designed to keep you in a loop are the same ones pulling you out of perspective. And here is the quiet reward for noticing this. When stimulation drops, urgency fades. Your thinking stretches. Problems stop feeling crowded and start feeling solvable. But there is a deeper reason this works. Because when the noise finally clears, a different system in the brain turns on. Your best ideas do not arrive when you are focused. They arrive when you stop trying. Think of the mind like a city at night. During the day, traffic dominates. Horns, lights, movement. But after midnight, when the street's empty, maintenance crews come out, connections get repaired, roads realign. The city quietly improves itself. That night shift has a name. The default mode network. You have felt it before, in the shower, on a long walk, staring out a window while nothing in particular happens. You are not being lazy. You are thinking at a deeper layer. Here is a practical moment you will recognize. You struggle with a decision all day, forcing it, analyzing, nothing clicks. Then later, while doing something boring, an answer just appears. Not loud. Not dramatic. Clean. Obvious. Almost annoying in hindsight. That is the default mode network at work. Neuroscience shows that when external stimulation drops, this network becomes active. It integrates memory, emotion, identity, and long-term goals. It connects distant ideas that focused attention keeps separate. This is not theory. Brain imaging consistently shows increased DMN activity during low stimulation, internally directed states. Here is the conflict. Modern life rarely allows this system to come online. The moment boredom appears, we interrupt it. We shut down the very mechanism responsible for insight. High performers do not. They understand something subtle. Focus solves known problems. Boredom solves unknown ones. This is where strategic thinking is born, not in urgency, not in pressure, but in cognitive quiet. There is a reason your mind wanders when you are bored. It is not losing control. It is searching for patterns that matter. And here is the reward for staying there. The decisions start aligning with who you are, not just what is in front of you. Your thinking gains depth. Your direction gains coherence. But this only works if boredom is intentional. Because there is a difference between drifting into stillness and engineering it. And that is where elite performers separate themselves. High performers do not end up bored. They schedule it, not on a calendar, in their environment, in the way their days are designed. Think of boredom like altitude training. You do not live there because it is comfortable. You go there because it changes what your body, mind, can tolerate. Most people wait for boredom to happen accidentally. A delayed flight. An empty room. 5 quiet minutes they immediately kill with a screen. High performers do the opposite. They remove stimulation on purpose. No music, no input, no background noise to lean on. Here is a simple example. 2 people take the same walk. One fills it with podcasts, messages, updates. The other walks in silence. Same distance, radically different outcomes. The silent walk feels inefficient at first, even uncomfortable. The mind searches for something to grab onto. That tension is the training. Psychology explains why this works. Repeated exposure to low stimulation environments increases distress tolerance and impulse control. In plain terms, you stop needing something to happen in order to stay grounded. This is why high performers appear calm under pressure. They have practiced stillness when nothing is happening. So when everything is happening, they do not panic. There is a subtle power here. When you engineer boredom, you reclaim authorship over your attention. You decide when the mind is fed, and when it is left alone to sharpen itself. And here is the emotional reward most people miss. After a while, boredom stops feeling empty. It feels spacious, like stepping out of a crowded room and realizing how much clearer you can think. But this discipline does something even deeper, because when stimulation disappears, so does external validation. And what is left is identity. That is the next layer. When the noise disappears, so do your excuses. Boredom is a mirror. No distortion. No filters. Just you, reflected back without commentary. Most people do not dislike boredom. They dislike what shows up in it. Picture an empty stage after the lights go out. No audience. No applause. No cues telling you how to perform. That is boredom. Here is a moment you will recognize. You sit down with nothing to do. No phone. No input. Just time. At first, the mind fidgets, reaches, searches for something familiar to latch onto. Then something uncomfortable surfaces. Questions, doubts, desires you have postponed. That is not distraction failing. That is identity stepping forward. Psychology explains this clearly. When external validation drops, the brain shifts toward internally guided decision-making. Values, long-term goals, and self-concept become more salient. This is not philosophical. It is observable in behavioral studies on self-regulation and motivation. Here is the conflict. People who cannot sit in boredom end up outsourcing their decisions. Trends decide for them. Urgency decides for them. Other people's expectations decide for them. High performers notice this early. They use boredom as a filter. Whatever still matters when nothing is happening. That is what is real. This is why boredom feels threatening. It removes the mask of productivity. It asks a quiet question. What would you do if no one was watching? And here is the emotional reward for staying with it. Decisions feel lighter, cleaner, more aligned. You stop reacting to the world and start responding from yourself. But identity alone is not the advantage. The real edge appears when stillness compounds over time. That is where the asymmetry begins. Stillness does not look powerful. That is why it works. In a world addicted to motion, the person who does not move immediately controls the frame. Think of a chessboard. Most players rush pieces forward, mistaking activity for progress. The strongest player pauses, not because they are unsure, but because they are mapping outcomes 5 moves ahead. That pause is stillness. Here is what makes it asymmetric. It benefits the few who tolerate it, while the many actively avoid it. Picture a market panic. Prices moving fast. Opinions louder than facts. Most people feel compelled to act, to do something. High performers wait. They watch. They let emotional volatility burn itself out. By the time they move, the decision is obvious, cheap. This is not temperament. It is trained cognition. Psychological research shows that individuals with higher tolerance for low arousal states demonstrate better long-term planning and reduced susceptibility to social contagion. In simple terms, they do not catch other people as urgency. Stillness creates time arbitrage. While others spend attention reacting, you accumulate information. While others chase clarity, you let it come to you. There is a quiet confidence that emerges here. Not arrogance, not detachment, precision. You stop feeling pressure to signal intelligence. You do not rush to speak. You do not rush to decide. You do not rush to prove anything. And here is the emotional payoff. When you finally act, the world seems to move out of your way. Because stillness compounds. Clarity compounds. And over time, this creates an uneven playing field that no amount of buzziness can overcome. But there is one last truth beneath all of this. Stillness is not passive. It is disciplined restraint. And that distinction is what most people never learn to see. Here is the part that is rarely said out loud. Boredom is not uncomfortable because nothing is happening. It is uncomfortable because nothing is protecting you. No stimulation, no urgency, no external reason to stay busy. Just you and the weight of choice. Think of boredom as a locked room with no distractions, no windows, no noise, just a table and the question you have been postponing. What actually matters when nothing is demanding your attention? This is where most people leave, not because they are weak, but because boredom removes alibis. You cannot blame the schedule. You cannot blame the market. You cannot blame the noise. Psychologically, this is exposure. When external cues disappear, the brain is forced to reconcile identity with action. Values surface. Inconsistencies surface. So does avoidance. That is the toll. High performers do not enjoy this moment. They respect it. They know that staying here, just a little longer than comfortable, produces decisions that do not need defending. Moves that do not need applause. Strategies that do not depend on momentum. There is a strange calm that follows, not relief, alignment. You stop asking, "What should I do next?" and start recognizing what can be ignored entirely. That is why this insight is not popular. It does not give you more options. It takes most of them away. And what remains is leverage. Because once you have learned to sit with boredom, nothing external can rush you again. And that is the quiet advantage everything else in this video has been pointing toward. Let us bring this together. Boredom was never the enemy. Distraction was. You saw it clearly. Boredom is unused capacity. Stimulation addiction erodes strategy. Stillness activates the part of the mind that plans, integrates, and decides with depth. And those who can stay there without escaping gain an asymmetric advantage. But here is the pain most people recognize and quietly tolerate. Feeling busy, yet directionless. Consuming information without clarity. Moving constantly, but never feeling ahead. That tension does not come from lack of effort. It comes from a mind that never gets quiet enough to organize itself. High performers do not win by doing more. They win by removing noise until only what matters remains. That is the idea to take with you. Stillness is not absence. It is selection. And once you learn to sit with boredom, you stop being pushed by urgency, pulled by trends, or rushed by other people's priorities. You start moving on your own timing. The next problem most people face is this. Even when they remove noise, they still cannot focus deeply. They sit down. They try. And their mind fractures. That is not a willpower issue. It is psychological. In the next video, the psychology of extreme focus, why most people never reach it, we will break down why sustained focus is so rare, and why the people who master it operate on a completely different cognitive layer. If this way of thinking resonates, you are not alone. This space is for people who value depth over noise, clarity over motion, and quiet leverage over loud effort. Stay here. This is where that kind of thinking is built.